Hi everyone, so we are continuing the videos for section 3.3. So now we're going to get into multiplying whole numbers. So just like whenever we did addition and subtraction, we can use models and we can use algorithms. So we are going to start with doing models. So just like addition and subtraction, we can use base blocks to model multiplying in different bases. So this is the way that you would do it. It's just like how the book says, we're going to do it the same way. So we're going to draw pictures of base blocks. So I think that a nice way to set it up. So we are multiplying two factors, right? We are multiplying in this first example 2 and 4. So you draw 2 and write just like always. This is assumed to be in base 10 because there's not a base listed. It is assumed to be in base 10, so we can use our base 10 model. So we can draw 4 on one side and 2 on the other. And so then for each block that we have, right? So I think I'm going to do this by columns. So for every block we have here in a column, we just copy it as many times down here. So for a unit times a unit, we're going to get another unit. So we just have 4 units on the top, so we copy them twice down. So this is going to tell us how we do it. So this is going to tell us that 2 times 4 equals 8. Right, because we have 8 units now, and since we're in base 10, there's no regrouping that we can do, so we're just left with a product of 8 units. So what did we do? How would we write this down step by step? So the first thing that we did was we drew blocks for each factor, right? So we draw our table setup, we draw a block for each factor. The second thing we did is we filled in the area. Fill in the area. So in this case, we only had units, but in the other examples that we're going to do, we are going to start with the largest block. So in this case, we only had units, so it didn't matter how we started. And then after that, so after we fill in the area, we count the blocks and regroup. Okay, so let's do an example where we actually have to, where we're not just multiplying units. So the second example has 3 times 12. Again, this is assumed to be in base 10 because it's not listed. So I'm going to do the larger factor on this top space. So we have 1 long and 2 units, right? 1, 2, and then we have 3 units. So remember that when we multiply things by a unit, we just get copies of those things. So when we multiply a long by a unit, we're just going to get a long. And then we have units times units just gives us units. And we're going to repeat this 3 times for each of the units that we have here on the left side. So we have a long and 2 units, and we repeat that 3 times. So now we are left with, down here in our picture, we are left with 3 longs and 6 units. And because we're in base 10, none of those are high enough so that we can regroup. So this just tells us that we have 3 times 12 is 36. right? 3 longs and 6 units. Okay, so now we're gonna do an example that's a little bit more complex because it's in base 5. So again, we start the same way. So because we have that commutative property of multiplication, it doesn't matter which, if we put the 12, where we put our 1, 2, and where we put our 2, 3, just like up here, it didn't matter where we put our 3 and our 12. So I'm gonna continue to put the, I'm going to continue to put the bigger number on the top instead of the side. Let me try and draw this straight. Okay, so I'm gonna put the 2, 3 on the top. So we have a long and a long and 3 units. And then we're going to have 1 long and 2 units. So we know what happens when we multiply things by units. We just get that same thing back. It's really similar to the multiplicative identity. When you multiplied it, you got that same thing back. So now what's going to happen when we multiply a long and a long? So when we multiply a long by a long, this is going to give us a flat, right? Because you can think about this in terms of area, right? This is called an area model. You can see that if you have one long representing your length and one long representing your width, you're going to get a flat out. And we can apply that concept to everything. So we have another long times a long gives us another flat. But especially, I mean, even if we're multiplying a long by a unit, well, the long gives us that length here, and then our width is given by the unit, so it makes a long. So we have the length given by the long, the width by the unit, and we just do that. Okay, so this was multiplying our long across. So now we're going to do a unit. So a unit right here is going to represent our length, our length, and then we have our width. So just like before, a unit times a long is a long, just like a long times a unit is a long because of that commutative property. And right, a unit, just everything copies down exactly like before. So this last one's going to have, again, 2 longs and 3 units. Okay. So now we are going to regroup, right? So now we're in base 5. So just like always, we're going to regroup starting with the smallest thing that we have. So we can regroup 5 of these units into a long. So just like before, when we regroup, we should draw how the things regroup. Okay, so we have these 5 units go into 1 long. Well, now we have these 5 longs. Well, I actually don't want to do those, so it's just a little hard to see. We have these 5 longs that are going to go into a flat. Okay, so now that we regroup those 5 longs, we only have 3 longs left, right? We have these 1, 2, 3 longs left. So we can't regroup anymore, and we only have 3 flats, so we can't regroup that either. So this is done for regrouping. So we were left with 1 unit, 3 longs, and 1, 2, 3 flats. So now we can just write this out. So we have, we can write it out. So we have 1 unit, 3 longs, and 3 flats. So we can write it out as 1, 2, base 5, times 2, 3, base 5 is 3, 3, 1, base 5. Okay, so this one I know was the most complicated example just because we had to regroup a lot and we got into flats. So just keep in mind that the area model, you can use the unit, the long, or the flat to represent length and width that helps you draw this as an area model. Okay, so that's all for modeling. Next, we will talk about the algorithms, and that'll be in the next video. So that's all.